Welcome to the TSO Parallel Guide. Its calibration and its use. Let's take a closer look. The object of calibration is to ensure that the distance between the tip of the calibration rod and the cut line at the splinter guard is accurately reflected onto the cursor on the engraved scale. The way we set the calibration is we move the flip stop to an easy to work with number, 10 inches, under the cursor, lock it, and I've already taken a combination square and set the blade to 10 inches. All I need to do now is just move that up against the splinter guard, tap the calibration rod against it, and lock it in place, and it's done. It is that simple. We repeat it on the other set of tracks, and we're ready to go and cut some wood. The way we calibrate the flip stop is we move it to an easily work with number, a round number. I set it to 10 inches, lock the flip stop. I take my combination square with the blade already set to exactly 10 inches, and I slide it up against the splinter guard, and now all I need to do is tap the calibration rod against it, lock it in place, and I'm done. Wait a minute, you say. Now, what if I want to cut something that is a dimension other than 10 inches? Let's say you want to cut 15 inches. Well, very simple, because this now is calibrated to anything on the scale. This is not just relating to 10 inches. Let's say you want to go to 15 inches. We set this thing to 15 inches, and let's check it and see what we've got. We got 15 inches right here. And we go back, let's say, to just take 8 inches. Here we are at 8 inches. And I already reset my scale on the combination square to 8 inches. And guess what? 8 inches, right on the dot. So once you've calibrated, you're really good to go. Now let's take a look and see what is necessary to calibrate it if we're going to use the narrow stock option, the narrow stock calibration rod. And we begin by replacing the standard calibration rod with the long one. And we move that across the top of the rail, and all I need here is just a stop block. It's just a simple piece of 2x4 that I cut square, and I just slide the narrow stock rod up against it, lock it in place. And so now when I want to cut, all I need to do is add the round number 10 inches to whatever the reading is. So for example, if I want to cut a 2.5 inch wide piece, I set this to 12.5 inches, 10 inches for the calibration rod allowance, and another 2.5 inches. So I got 12.5 inches on the reading. And to check it, I can see that this gives me a 2.5 inch cut back from the splinter guard. That's all there's to it. And the next step would be to raise the guide rail to the height of the workpiece and move the flip stop back and push this underneath to the 12.5 inch setting that we want to use for cutting, or any other dimension that we want to set for cutting. Now let's take a practical example. Let's say we've got this piece of material here, and we need a 2.5 inch wide strip cut off of it. 2.5 inches obviously constitutes a narrow cut. We've already calibrated the flip stops on both tracks, and I've set them to 12.5 inches because we have a 10 inch calibration extension on the stop rod plus we want to cut 2.5 inches off. So the stop rod has to be back 2.5 inches plus the 10 inches that it is long in and of itself. So we've got this set to 12.5 inches, same thing over here. Now, obviously, much of the guide rail is going to be unsupported, as you can see. So we need to substitute for that, because normally, you'd be cutting somewhere near the middle of the sheet. All of this would be sitting on top of the workpiece. So now we're just cutting this narrow strip, and in order to do that, we need to provide some additional support. And I've got some pieces of scrap plywood, and they will do just fine for that. Nothing particularly fancy. It doesn't need to be perfectly aligned or anything. All you're trying to do is to have enough material underneath to provide support and also to engage the anti-slip strips on the bottom so the guide rail doesn't move around on you when you're cutting. So what we need to do now that we're set, all we need to do is just pick up the guide rail, move it until the calibration rods touch the workpiece, and I'm good to go. So let's get a track saw here and see if we can cut some wood. Now let's see what we've done. Here is our cut piece, and let's see how close we came to our target of 2.5 inches. I've got that set on the machinist square, and as you can see, that is pretty close. It's about as close as you're going to get it. Perfect. And that's really all there's to it. I hope you find this helpful.